has ended. I propose that the Senate now adjourn. Senator Urquhart.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Recently, the US ordered an investigation into the death of one of its citizens. Her name was Shireen Abu Akleh, a veteran Al Jazeera journalist and one of the biggest names in Arab journalism. She was also a Palestinian. Shireen was wearing a vest emblazoned with the words "press" when she was shot in the head and killed. The Israeli military immediately blamed Palestinians for her death. However, when independent probes, including by New York Times, found there was no Palestinians firing in the area, they retracted that statement. Israel's own probe now admits that there is a high probability that an Israeli soldier fired the shot, but that was accidental and there will be no criminal investigation. Just to be very clear, she was working as a journalist, clearly wearing a press jacket, and Israeli soldiers were the only ones firing. Israel has said that they will not cooperate with the US probe, even though they're supported by $3.8 billion US every year in military aid from the US. Shireen is one of 197 Palestinians killed by Israeli forces this year alone. This includes 43 children. Those killed in the last 2 months include a 15-year-old girl, Fuller Razmi, who was shot while a passenger in a car driving slowly along Palestinian residential streets, 12-year-old boy Mahmoud, who allegedly threw a few stones at a military jeep in his town, a town where under Oslo Accords Israeli forces should not be, and in response soldiers shot him with live ammunition. Speaking about Israel's attacks on Gaza in May, the UN Secretary-General said, "I am shocked by the number of children killed and maimed by Israeli forces during hostilities in airstrikes on densely populated areas and through the use of live ammunition during law enforcement operations and by the persistent lack of accountability for these violations." An opinion poll conducted by YouGov earlier this year revealed a majority of Australians want to end Israel's military occupation of Palestine and an end to the Egyptian and Israel siege of Gaza. The opinion poll said Palestine should be given full recognition and to support the International Criminal Court investigation into war crimes in Palestine. I saw with my own eyes the impact of Israel's military occupation of Palestine. I watched children being tried in military courts. These did not meet any of the basic standards of a fair trial. This process ends with a 99% conviction rate for Palestinians can hardly be deemed just. I saw homes that had been demolished by Israeli forces. I saw families displaced by settlements and their family lands being declared closed military zones. I stood beside the 9-metre-high concrete wall that Israel has built, twice as high and 4 times as long as the Berlin Wall, which rips apart Palestinian neighbourhoods and annexes Palestinian lands. Military occupations are inherently brutal, but they are never supposed to be permanent. Military occupations must be opposed whether in Ukraine or in Palestine. A recent report by the UN Commission of Inquiry found that the Israeli occupation is unlawful under international law. And I'd like to quote Commissioner Chris Sidoti, formerly of the Australian Human Rights Commission. The actions, and he said, the actions of Israeli governments reviewed in our report constitute an illegal occupation and annexation regime that must be addressed. The international system and individual states must act and uphold their obligations under international law. That must begin at this session of the General Assembly with a referral to the International Court of Justice." Close the quote. The Australian Government is committed to an international rules-based order which upholds the rights of all people wherever they may live. Today is the United Nations Day of Solidarity with Palestinian people. This day exists to call on the international community to not just to speak, but for us to act. We must recognise the rights of Palestinians as equal to Israelis, to have self-determination, to have security, to have and live equally amongst the world's nations. We must also support Israeli accountability in international courts and ensure Israel's violations of international law are challenged.
Thank you, Senator.